Hi and hello watch fans, and welcome to another edition of the Real Time Show with me, your friendly neighbourhood watchmaker, Rob Nuds, my co-host calling in all the way from Amsterdam, Alain Ben Joseph, and today we are joined by one of French watchmaking's leading lights, Carlos Rosillo of Bell & Ross fame. Now Alain has got a long and storied history with the brand, so I'm going to kick it over to him to give Carlos the introduction he deserves. Alain, take it away.
Carlos, bonjour, welcome.
Bonjour. In fact, just to be precise, I'm half French, half Spanish, so quite international.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Muy bien, ¿y tú?
Muy bien, gracias. So, Rob and I are super honored, Carlos, to have you on the show.
It's my pleasure.
We are both huge fans of Belarus. We love what Bruno and you have been doing since 1993. I had the honor to own several Belarus watches, still do, even retail the brand. So I have hands-on experience with what kind of gentlemen the both of you are. I would even like to call you rock stars. You guys breed fun, adventure, excitement, and no BS. What you see is what you get. Your watches are form, follow function, but always elegant. Although you're based in Paris, everything is Swiss made. Please tell us why Bruno and you started Belarus in 1993.
Simply because we love watches. And we wanted to make a type of watch that was not necessarily there in the market. We were lucky enough to have good godfathers who helped us to make it possible. And as simple as that. The passion of watches, the complicity of great watchmaker, great people who make that two young guys who had dreams could make those dreams happen.
You prove now how modest you are, because exactly 30 years ago, and congratulations on your 30th anniversary this year, things were not simple at all. Coming out of the quartz crisis, seeing some pilot watches coming to surface in around 85, I'm thinking about the Chronomat, IWC bringing back the pilot watches a bit. You guys were early adopters. So walk us through the difficulties you had, because a lot of people don't know, but you guys actually teamed up with Sin, if I'm not mistaken.
The difficulties are not at the beginning. It's like a person when you're born and when you're lucky to be a nice baby, good health, good shape, you're a lucky baby, or only smiling. You don't see the problems. It's getting older that you discover the problems that you might have. And yeah, I think that we were really lucky babies. We loved watches. And we had a very clear vision about the type of watches we want to do. And we had the help of the right people, as I was mentioning, to make it possible. So at the beginning, let's say that not having money, but having the right people to help you to be on the stage is fantastic, because you're not polluted by the let's say, the money aspect, the commercial aspect. You're just driven by your passion and by the knowledge of the wise people who help you to make it possible. So I think that when I remember the beginning of our adventure, really I have only good memories, including what might look, when you look as a spectator of, poor guys, they were traveling on coach with buses to visit Mr. Helmut Zinn during the evening with all the migrants. Yeah, but we were like smiling, happy faces, because no headache. Just the goodwill of Mr. Helmut Zinn, his knowledge after Mr. Schmidt, his knowledge about engineering, Mr. Helmut's, to put on perspective for the ones who are not familiar with those names, let me pay a tribute to the early stages and the people who help us. Helmut Zinn, wow, what a man! This is a real adventurer. When we met him, he was 75, very good shape, still piloting his plane. He had this company, a Sin company, existing since the 50s, making pilot clocks for the dashboard of planes, making some watches, and making incredible. He had the tools. For instance, you were quoting about incredible brands, fantastic brands that have been so inspiring for the pilot watches. And he had, for instance, the original tools of the 70s, I guess, of the old Navy timer. And he had this kind of knowledge, this kind of technical background that made possible that two young guys who had just dreams and who loved watches, they could, with the talent of Bruno, design the kind of watches, and he helped us to make it possible. And after that, Mr. Schmidt, who bought the company to Mr. Helmut Sin, ex-technical director of IWC for 20 years. He was the man who prepared the launching of Lange with Gunther Blumlein. I mean, can you imagine this kind of mix? The reference that I'm quoting, it's all the people on all the watches and all the brands who had more than 100 years and the people who made the technical knowledge, they help us to launch Bell & Ross with zero money. Not even the price of the watch I'm wearing today, which is not so expensive. But with this technical background that was incredible. And this is the early stage that makes that we arrived with, we prepare with Bruno 2 years of preparation for the collection. And when we arrived in the market, it was just with our passion, with our dreams, and with, let's say, an approach that was extremely pure in terms of economics, in terms of commercial. No concession, zero concession. At that time, when you're young, you can have utopias, but utopias are fantastic because they drive you in the right way. I remember one of my utopias was to have zero problem of watches because the quality of our watches should make that we prevent the problems of the people who would buy the watch. Of course, I discovered that you cannot have zero. It's impossible. But it's good to have this kind of dream because I remember at the time one of my beliefs was that the four elements that makes reputation is, of course, the product, then the image, how you display the product, how you put the product in the front line, in the spotlight. So the image, the distribution, the quality of distribution, in order to make that your message is 100% transmitted to the end user, and then the service, the quality of the service that makes that you have a long-lasting life. With those pillars, this is how we established Bell & Ross. We had very simple principles, for instance, in terms of design, to be consistent and different, as says Bruno, but also to have 4 design principles that makes that the design, the design codes were very clear and simple. First, readability. First, functionality, precision, and water resistance or reliability. As simple as that.
I mean, that sounds like a wonderful foundation upon which to build a brand in general. But I mean, you mentioned some real legends in that opening spiel there, some great icons of the industry. And I would say that your square watches in particular have become iconic in their own right, but they weren't the first style of watch that you released in the early 90s, right? They didn't come around until the early 2000s when Chanel got involved. Can you tell us a bit about the earliest products that Bell and Ross released, ones that maybe our listeners haven't seen or aren't as familiar with, and then take us through the product design progression right up until the modern day.
You're absolutely right. First, we had the inspiration of the cockpit of the dashboard, the clock which is on the dashboard, but we didn't have the square watch. You have to take in mind something. When you start a company, first, it's like a baby. You have to put the name. So we put the name of our names, shortcut of our names. But second, you have to design your logo. And Bruno, in the early stages, what he proposed was a very interesting idea. If you look at our logo, Bell and Ross, but the end percent has a circle. What does it represent? The end percent with the circle? The center of the watch itself. And the bell and the Ross represents the strap. And the B would be the buckle. So stylistically, it's a kind of caricature of a round watch. And we began with round watches, with pilot watches. Of course, the dial of all our round watches were inspired by dashboard instruments because we love pilot watches, because we love military watches. This was the type of watches we collect. And then we were inspired by this dashboard. And it was only the round watches that makes, not only the round watches, because I remember there was also the space one, which was kind of total shape, no lugs, but most of them were round. And the second stage of our adventure was when Chanel came on board, because I think they help. If you see the evolution of our company, we began as I'm mentioning, in a fantastic way. Big problem. Turnover and the growth could have been incredible because we had a demand which was international. But how do you cope that when you're just two guys of 25 with no money? It's impossible. You cannot cope this kind of success. So you have to calm down. You have to say, I cannot face this kind of demand. Let's stabilize the plane. Through my background, my business background, I knew that we needed to have financial partners. But we were lucky enough not to have only financial partners, but people who love watches, who really enjoy watches, who know what is luxury, who know how to protect the Chanel people. Private-owned company and good, willing people who help us a lot. This was the second stage. And so this was in quite early, actually, 97. And then the problem that we had to face was every time we were launching something, everybody was saying, oh, bright idea. Wow, congratulations, Bruno. And 6 months later, they could see kind of ideas, but with the power of the brands in a huge way. So it means that as we didn't have this kind of power, it was impossible to face this competition. And then I challenged Bruno saying, what is the center of a brand that makes us different? This was during the 2000 years, and we thought about it, and we said, we conclude that since day one, what was in our catalog was the dashboard, the panel clock that is in the dashboard. And I challenged Bruno saying, can you put this instrument, which is normally on the dashboard, can you put it on the wrist? And this is what he achieved in 2005 with the BR01. The square watch, round in a square with 4 screws, like a dashboard clock. And I remember that there is another gentleman that I remember, which is a legend for me. I don't know if you're familiar, Mr. Imai. Mr. Imai, journalist, in Japan, one of the biggest collector of pilot watches. He's the man who made the books on the Speedmaster. He's the man who makes the books, all those encyclopedia about Zippo, etc. I mean, incredible collector. And when he came in Basel and he saw this watch, he said, "You have done this move into the cursive signage, the cursive way to write." You know, I'm not that familiar with the Japanese metaphor, but I think what he wanted to say is that we have made an important jump into the pilot watch league, because it was very difficult for us to explain our inspiration and then to had a chance to exist in front of the big ones. And suddenly, we have captured the center of the dashboard. And when you are inspired by aviation, when you have captured the center of the dashboard, you have captured the soul of what is an aviation watch. Maybe. I don't know.
I do know, and you blew away all the collectors of pilot watches with that BR01 and later the BR03. And I already fell in love with you guys when you were being produced by Sin, so very tool watch very less is more, very form follows function. And then you guys went a bit retro-ish with the BRV1, which I still love, and I'm happy to see that you still have them in the collection. I guess you guys are evolving the brand beautifully. So you did capture the essence of pilot watches, bit the BR03, because my dad already started collecting these dashboard instruments from fighter pilot planes, which were made by Wachmann. Maybe it says something to you. Obviously, my dad immediately bought one when your watch came out, and my brother still has one. And so that's amazing. So going from there and continuing on Rob's previous question, so you guys moved into the BR05 and then the BRX5, which I also love. Can you a little bit tell us about that and how you guys evolved into that direction? Because that is, for me, the epitome of tool watches, taking it into the 21st century.
Bruno his origins is the countryside. He is from Burgundy. I'm a typical city guy, born in Paris, city guy. The base, the 01, 03, the square coming from the panel, as Bruno is mentioning, it's like if you like cars, the Defender of Land Rover. Tough, strong, but it has power. It has strength. But it's more, for not to. I mean, you can wear it with a suit, but it's more sport. And for instance, I used to wear suits, and it doesn't fit. And for instance, the instrument 01 or 03 is not made to have a metal bracelet. It's meant to be worn with a leather strap, with a rubber strap, with a Velcro, not with a steel bracelet. When you go in the city or in some climates, you want something which is that you will be able to wear with a bracelet that is maybe more jewel-oriented, more formal. And this is how we move from the countryside to the city, from the Defender to the Evoque, from leather strap or rubber strap watch with lugs to an integrated bracelet with a watch with no lugs that allows, like it was done in the 70s, you had this kind of shape where there were no lugs, integrated bracelet. We made that the square was more rounded. We kept the round in a square with the 4 screws. we kept the dial of Bell & Ross. We kept all the DNA of Bell & Ross, the iconic dial, the iconic shape, but we make it more jewelry oriented. It might be that, I mean, today the 03, 01 is definitely, we don't have to put the logo on it. You recognize it's a Bell & Ross, or it's a counterfeit of Bell & Ross, let's say. The 05, which appeared in 2019, is probably, I mean, commercially, it's definitely the second pillar because it's already nearly half of our sales. But I would say that it's very complementary. Personally, to respond to the question, I was a little mean when I asked you, do you prefer countryside or the city? I would say both, really, because when I'm in the city, I need to go during weekends at the countryside. And when I'm at the countryside, during gardening or whatever, there is a moment that I want to go back to the city, and I like both. And I think this is what we achieved with 03 and 05. And the next step, which is X5, that we introduced last year, is what I call a marathon, a watchmaking marathon. We have been doing incredible technical achievements with some bright people like Vincent Calabrese, B&B, Pierre Fabre. I mean, I cannot quote them all because they are so talented, and they help us to make high-end complications, incredible complications, specially made for us, or recently with all the saga of the skulls, with this automat that we made a special movement that is designed as a skull. But all those incredible achievements were limited editions produced in a limited edition way, and you cannot produce it in a bigger scale. And we said, let's go into the sophisticated movement, the very reliable. And we have lucky stars at Bell & Ross, and I mean, through the Chanel connection, we could get into the connection of, if you're familiar with Kennedy, who is a joint venture between Chanel and Tudor, and who accepted to develop a special movement for us. And we wanted this movement to have not only a long-lasting power reserve of 70 hours, but an indicator of this power reserve, large date window, and also to fulfill all the specifications that I was mentioning about precision, so COSC certification, about reliability, to give a 5 years warranty, etc., etc., etc. And this has allowed us to go in what is called today, and don't ask me, please, I can quote the name, don't ask me what it is, because as recently during Geneva Days, I asked to a journalist, what is a manufacturer? She responded that she doesn't know anymore, but she knows what is a 5 years warranty. She knows what is a COSC certification. She knows what is a very reliable movement. And this is what we achieve with X5. With a special design, more sophisticated than the 05, because it's a multi-component case with many materials. For instance, I think we were speaking recently about the X5 carbon forgé, which is a combination of carbon forgé, of titanium, of high-tech rubber, etc. And it's a multiple layout construction, sandwich construction, that allows to have a very sophisticated case combined with inside in the movement, very reliable movement developed by Kennedy for us. And so this is the X5 way, which is a new adventure, because it's not only what we have achieved with the high-end complication that we have done, or or all the automats and all those complicated movement. It's a sophisticated movement, but that we can just for instance, price wise, it's below 10,000.
I mean, it's a long way below 10,000, and it's an absolute bargain in comparison to many other things around it. And I think the thing that surprises me about the X5 is, well, quite frankly, how much I like it. I was really attracted to Bell & Ross in the early days of the square models. That's what piqued my interest. That's what stood out to me as like something completely stylistically independent from everything else. I loved the radar model. That was always my favorite. I thought it was a really clever and thematically congruous design that put your brand on another level. But the X5 should be, on paper, everything I don't want a brand like Bell & Ross to do. It's a refinement of the concept. It is a gentrification of the concept almost. It's taking that instrument and making it elegant. And if you hadn't succeeded, I'd be pretty annoyed about it. But luckily enough, you did a damn good job. And the ice blue color is one of the most enticing that I've seen ever. And I'm a sucker for a rubber strap, especially one with these nice perforations in it. But tell me, given the incredibly complex case construction that you alluded to, that for our listeners that haven't seen this watch, I'll just break it down. Basically, the way the X5 is constructed enables you to use multiple different materials on different levels. It's basically a case capsule that sits within a case frame that defines the silhouette of the watch. And then there's another layer of, well, I guess it could be any material. It could be aluminium. It could be titanium. It could be carbon. As a little pop of color above that case frame, then the bezel with the iconic 4 screws and a nicely recessed dial with this massive 3-day date window on the right-hand side, and then the power reserve on the left-hand side. You have so much scope here to play around with materials, to bring in new colors, to mess with the design. Have you got anything on the cards that you can share with us in this regard?
I think you captured the essence of what is X5, which is a new road, a new playground for Bell & Ross to express ourselves. And it's a way also to show our vision of what should be the future of watchmaking according Bell & Ross. Good combination of strong design and very reliable and excellency in terms of technical mechanism. And we love this combination. One thing that I didn't mention, which is, in fact, the most important aspect of Bell & Ross, is the center of the logo, the %. As I explained, we were lucky to have a good combination between four competence: design, engineering, watchmaking, professional use. I think with this X5, it's a good expression of the union of competence that is the base of our philosophy. We have combined the design power with the knowledge of Hennessy in terms of manufacturing excellent movement. And this is a new road for us that is a marathon, because when you commit to that, it's not one shot, one limited edition, and that's it. No. It's a long term. You're speaking about industrial process. For instance, before launching, to give you a very pragmatic example in the business way, when we launched X5, before launching it, I had to commit for the 5 next years quantities of the X5 movement we wanted to get, because otherwise I knew that I wouldn't be able to fulfill the possible demand. So you imagine the kind of business challenge we had. You haven't sold one watch, you're betting on a new segment, and you have to commit for the 5 next years in terms of production.
Thank you for this. It's amazing actually to hear the philosophy and the evolution, because the ampersand is literally at the core of your DNA, so the and sign. And it became also very crystal clear to me that you guys are very inclusive and all about friendship and partnership, especially with the amazing collab you guys did with the infamous Alain Silberstein for Grail Watch with the trilogy. I love these 3 watches. So congratulations on that well-deserved success. And you guys did something epic. You deleted the bell and Ross side of the logo, and you just went for the ampersand plus circle around it. What was the philosophy behind that, Carlos?
uh, there is a long. In fact, I was thinking about this watch, and I mean this collection, because it's actually 3 watches. This morning, while I was thinking about this collection, just before this interview, I was lucky enough to go to the Louis Vuitton Foundation to visit the Warhol and Jean-Michel Basquiat retrospective collaboration between Warhol and Jean-Michel Basquiat. My point is that the man who put us on board to jump on this collaboration is Waco. Waco, I think, is a friend, first of all. And he wanted to, when he launched Grail watches, he wanted to make Grail watches. And so he came to speak with me and to say, why don't you collaborate? Why could we do a collaboration between Alain Silberstein and Bell & Ross? And I said, but wait, it's 2 designers, Bruno and Alain Silberstein, with their brain, with their emotions, with their creation inspiration. How do you combine 2 designers? He responded to me in a very crystal clear way. When among the best musics, probably some of the great songs were collaboration between two musicians, and the example he took were very clear. I said, it's worth trying to make them encounter and see if they get along. And we made the meeting, and our technical director is a man who knows who knows Alain Silberstein for a very long time, for the early stages. And so suddenly the state of mind of Bruno and Alain Silberstein was like a freeway. You just have to easy ride. And we let them express. And I think definitely this collaboration is very, very interesting, because the difficulty in a collaboration is, how do you make that it matches together and one is not dominant towards the other one, especially when you have 2 designers, 2 bright designers. And I think in those watches, the N% is really there with union of designers, and not one who would take over the power of, no. It's really, and no logo, just at the back of the watch, you have the 2 names. On the dial, you just have the N%, simplicity.
I mean, as it turns out, there couldn't be a better logo for insinuating collaboration and this meeting of minds. And I think for us, or for me personally, the reason why that collaboration with Alain was so successful is that it has all of the aesthetic cues we'd expect from his work, but it's decorating your canvas, Bruno's canvas, like this very special, very unusual, very iconic silhouette. And when you've got that, you've got a huge step up in terms of your potential collaborations, because you can let other people run riot with what you've established as a cornerstone of your brand, and therefore, in this case, the industry. So are there any other designers, maybe in the industry or outside of the industry, that you look at now that you'd really like to collaborate with, or maybe even other watch brands?
There are a lot of people that I highly respect and that I appreciate very much. Right now, we don't have, I could not quote a collaboration that we have in mind. But I think I'm like Bruno, I'm a collector, and I collect watches. To be frank, I also enjoy wearing watches that not only Bell & Ross. So this gives us, I guess, the a path to make genuine, good collaborations because there is common self-respect. A good collaboration is when it's not artificial. It's when you have a combination of talents that makes that the project is much richer than what each creator of each brand would have done separately.
How is the partnership between Bruno and you? How did you guys meet? And who takes responsibility for what within the company?
Okay, it's very simple. We met when we were 14 at the Lycée Carnot. The responsibilities are very simple. He's the creative part, taking in charge with the product, image, everything which is about creation. And I'm the business part. My background is master business administration. His background is product design. He has done the first school was created in the 80s of design. And so we're very complementary. And I think one of the big success I'm proud is to be still very, 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 very good friends after 30 years of business, because starting a business with your friend is a risk for the friendship.
It definitely is. And Rob is a bit of a dictator in our partnership, but we still are good friends.
I'm glad you said tater on the end of that. I thought you were just going to stop at dick.
I have to confess that if one would be the dictator in this relationship, I would be the one. But he has. I have learned a lot from his wise spirit.
That's good. No, but that's a good symbiosis. So going from the evolution of your DNA and design, which was amazing. I love the analogy of the Defender because that's one of my all-time favorite cars ever. And I love the comparison. And I called you rock stars in my introduction because you guys made awesome skull watches. Tell us a bit about why you made the first one, why they resonate so much, because I've sold quite a few of them. Some of my friends have them, which they don't own anything with skulls. But that watch, they had to have.
The power of strong symbols. If you remember 2008, big crisis, economic crisis. Everybody is frightened about what's going on. The watch industry is affected by this crisis. Our reference is the military watches, the military background. When you look the military symbols from any army, any period, the elite troops, from the Napoleons to the paratroopers, the US paratroopers who jump to liberate Europe, everybody, the elite troops, they're wearing one patch, one symbol, the skull, because it's the courage. It's a talisman, and it shows that they're not afraid by what is their mission, which is to be confronted and, to be confronted to death. They're not afraid by that, and they want to have a talisman, which is this skull, this symbol. But at the same time, the skull is also used by pirates, or it's a vanity. When you're in Amsterdam, one of my favorite paintings is from Holbein, where you have anamorphose. I don't know how to say in English, anamorphose. And you see in the painting the skull that is made as an anamorphose. So it means that the skull has two sides, courage, strength, but also vanity. Right now, one of my very important philosophy, and every morning when I wake up, I try to remember this sentence from Marc Aurèle. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that the power of the skull as a symbol might capture a lot of dual philosophy.
Carlos, I knew you're a great guy, but I'm going to add another title. You are a philosopher. Holbeins is famous for the ambassadors, and anamorphosis was created in the Renaissance for our dear listeners. And it's a distorted projection that requires the viewer to occupy a specific vantage point. And that explains a lot why you guys made all your skulls, and they're all different, in a 3D-ish or 2D shape. They're 3-dimensional almost. And the most recent one is actually very modern. So it's amazing to hear how deep you guys go in your design of the products, because on paper you could say, oh, they're very simple tool pilot watches, but you guys go very deep.
Speaking about skills, I remember what we have achieved for last Only Watch edition. Do you remember the sapphire skull orange? It was an amazing watch with the skull, with the symbol, and I like Luc Pétavino and the Only Watch, and I think you can express yourself in a very different way, and we express ourselves for this edition with a skull watch that was spectacular. And after that we have, because I think the beauty of creation is it's a never-ending story. One creation inspires you, the other one. And this is how Bruno works. He never wears a watch because he says that, first of all, it would remember his job too much on the waist, and he's in such a quest of perfection that he goes into the next one.
You discussed in length how the partnership came about with Alain Silberstein. You've spoken about several collabs. What's your view on the industry in general and on collabs? Do you think it's a trend that soon will fade, or do you think it's here to stay?
Trend of the industry, like any industry, concentration of distribution, concentration of everything. I mean, there is a room for independency, but concentration is the global trend. When you look on the perspective of any industry on the 2 last centuries, it will be difficult for me to find a economic playground where the concentration is not the economic trend. In terms of collabs, today, a lot of collabs. The question is, why do you do things in life? And especially in economic life, do you do only for economical reasons? Do you do it because it's meaningful? Do you do it because you want to get excited by and proud about what you're doing? The cause makes the difference.
I'm sure there's a lot of pride in the company, especially because, as I mentioned at the top of the show, although your personal backgrounds aren't entirely French, you are known as a French company and a leader in the French industry. My question is, because we've seen some interesting stuff coming from French companies in recent times, especially with the activities of our friend Guillaume Ledet and Théo Frey with their recent Argon Watches project that we reviewed on the show a few weeks ago. My question is, if the French industry is to reclaim the heights that it once knew, what needs to happen? What do you think Bell & Ross can do to push that forward and to make France an epicenter for watchmaking once more?
To have strong partnership in Switzerland. Okay, I'm a bicultural guy, half French, half Spanish. And I think when you have big cultural roots, you know the power of perspective that gives you the perspective to look at the French side with Spanish views and reverse. One time, there was a journalist who asked me, what is the difference between French watchmaking, Swiss watchmaking, and German watchmaking? Three very interesting roots and origins of watchmaking. And I responded, it's a question of perspective. I would say that, I was mentioning 4 talents in Bell & Ross: design, which is related for creation, engineering, watchmaking, and professional use. I would, if you have to caricature, I would say that probably the German watchmaking is driven by the engineer. The Swiss would be highly influenced by the watchmaker. Probably what the perspective that is given by the French is the design, the creation is very important. But the designer, for Bruno, he sees his job as a chief of orchestra, making that there is a good balance between the 4 talents that I was mentioning. He's a designer who, I remember one journalist said that he was one of the designers with the less ego he knew in the industry, which is easy to get this challenge. I'm really mean when I say that, but it's true that he's not an ego person. He doesn't like to get the spotlight on him. He doesn't like to appear. He doesn't like to be photo shoot, etc., etc. But I think that the combination between, for instance, the city where you live, the watch business is a cultural business. It means that there is the technique side and there is the emotional side coming from the creation. But it's a cultural product that, according to the culture you have and you were born, you give birth to something that has your background. I think that the combination of French creation and Swiss technicity with a godfather like Mr. Helmut Zinn, German, and Lothar Schmidt, both German, gives a very specific taste, very peculiar.
You're right, actually. It's peculiar, but in the best way, because it unites those strengths of those different nations as you outlined. And I think, generally speaking, we can say that we're very much in accord with you in defining the Germans as engineering leaders, the Swiss as watchmakers, and the French primarily as design maestros. It'll be interesting to see where you take the brand in the coming years because of the partnerships that you've been able to establish and all of the watches that you've managed to have success with thus far, because there's quite a broad spectrum, of course, with very basic watches, time-only watches, watches that are known for their form, and some really complicated, beautiful, extravagant, ambitious pieces. So we'll have to get you back on the show sometime in the coming months to discuss what has happened in between this conversation and our next. For now, I will say thank you very much, Carlos, for your time. It's been a real pleasure and very interesting to hear the backstory of Bell & Ross in such detail. If you would like to get in touch with us, if you have questions for Carlos or if you have questions for anyone else in the industry you'd like us to get on the show, then please do so. You can contact me via Instagram at RobNuds, ROBNUDDS, or Alon at Alon Ben Joseph, ALONBENJOSEPH. Or you can contact us via our emails, either Rob or Alon at therealtime.show, or via our contact form on the website www.therealtime.show. Please like, follow, subscribe to the podcast and share it with all your friends. We'll be back next week with more content for your ears. Until then, stay safe and keep on ticking.